Find the function whose graph is shown below. Starting off, we have here we'll just sketch our midline. And so our midline we can see here is at 3, looks like. That's not quite the right spot. And we want to identify if this is going to be if we want to write this as a sine or cosine function. And every sinusoid could be either one, but to decide, we look at if the x-coordinate of a maximum or minimum is easy to find or a point on the midline. And here, there's a minimum point that's pretty easy to see there. The x-coordinate is 0. And so we're going to use the cosine, which is usually the easiest to model when you know a maximum or minimum. So we're going to have cos A times cosine of bx minus c plus d. For A, we're going to look at our amplitude. And our amplitude here, the distance between the midline and a maximum or minimum, is a distance of 2. And so A is going to be either 2 or negative 2. And this is important because cosine here, our starting point is at a minimum. And that tells us that A is going to be a negative number because that reflection, that vertical reflection has occurred. And so A is going to be a negative 2. For B, we need to get our period. So 2 pi over b, and I'm going to, for cosine, I always let b be positive because the reflection in the y-axis, it doesn't actually change the shape of the cosine. And the period here, we can see from minimum to minimum, that is a distance of pi over 2. And so now we can solve for b. If I multiply both sides by 2 over pi and by b and 2 over pi, we can see the pi's cancel, the 2's cancel, here the b's cancel, those pi's cancel. We get 2 times 2, which is 4, equals b. And so now we have b is 4 x. And c over b is the phase shift. That's the x-coordinate of the starting point. And the starting point I used here was at x equals 0. That's equal to 0, so that's going to let c be 0. And then d is, of course, the y value of the midline, which is 3. So we add 3. So there's our function. Now it's important to remember that for sinusoids, because of their periodic nature, this is not the only equation that would actually work. We could have looked at, say this point here and viewed that as our starting point, in which case we could have thought of this as, well, the a would have been a positive. Our period doesn't change, but our c would have changed because then we have a phase shift. Our x-coordinate is no longer 0. And so it's important to realize that there's not one correct formula for any sinusoid. You just decide where you're going to view your starting point and then go from there.